All right, guys, I'm excited for this week. This week's a little different. It's kind of an interview, but it's kind of not. We have somebody who I'm super excited for. We have a social worker, which we've really wanted to have somebody come on and join us with this. Now, granted, it is, we both know, me and Delancey both know it's different state by state. So she was telling us beforehand, there are some things that kind of generally apply, but every state is different. So if you're in Utah, you can benefit from this more than anything, but it never hurts to like reach out and find somebody. But I just love Kim because she's very open with things and she shares lots on her social media and she always is just so willing to answer questions. And I just love it. So go ahead and introduce yourself and then we'll start firing away with all the questions for you.
Questions. Okay. So my name is Kim Perry. I work with a company called Utah Adoption Specialists, which is a group of social workers. I co-founded the company in 2013 just because we saw a need for social work services related to adoption in the state of Utah that aren't necessarily tied to an agency. So my group is not an agency. We provide kind of a la carte adoption services. So home studies, updates to home studies, supervision visits when a couple's been placed with a baby. And then we provide counseling to expectant parents pre and post placement and help with relinquishments. So we kind of just help on a case by case basis for whatever each specific adoption situation needs. And the purpose, we started our company because we thought that there was a need for outside of an agency setting, because an agency, they have a place, but they can definitely be super expensive. And that is a barrier for some couples who are hoping to adopt to have a major, price tag attached to it. So that was the purpose of my company. Personally, I was born and raised in Idaho, but moved to Utah to go to college and have stayed my entire adult life. So I guess I'm a Utah now. And I'm married and I have 5 kids. 2 of my children were adopted from Ecuador. And so I do have some personal experience attached to adoption as well.
I love it. No, I love it so much. So probably like my first question out the gate is just kind of like, what would somebody do who's wanting to adopt? Like, what's probably the best first step for them to take?
Okay. So that's kind of a universal question. In any state, regardless of where you are and whatever, it doesn't even matter what kind of adoption you're hoping to pursue, you need to have a home study. So step number 1 for anyone hoping to adopt is to find a social worker or an agency or a group that can provide that home study for you. Now, a little bit of a caveat about that. I think it is important to identify what type of adoption you want to pursue before you jump in with both feet and get a home study, because a home study is going to be specific for each type of adoption. So for example, in the state of Utah, if you want to adopt out of the foster care system, you cannot come to my company and get a home study. They will not accept a home study from us. You need to get a home study from the state for that type of adoption. And then on the flip side, you cannot take a home study written by the state for the purposes of foster care or foster to adopt and use it for a private or an agency adoption. So identify what you want to do. And then an international adoption is a whole different thing as well. So you've got to have kind of an idea in mind of where you want to go and then find the appropriate provider that can provide the right home study for you.
That's crazy. See, I wouldn't have known it was different for different types of what you were going to do. I would have just assumed it's a home study.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question with that. Why is it different? Is there a specific reason why is it different? Like, I don't even know how to ask that question. Like,
no, that's a great question. No, actually, a home study written by the state for the purposes of foster care and a home study that we write are very similar. It just is, for whatever reason, and this is applicable to Utah. Other states may have different rules, but for whatever reason, the state regulations, the state law states that foster care home study cannot be released to the adoptive couple for the purpose of a private adoption. So sometimes we do have adoptive couples that are pursuing both routes. And so they basically have to replicate the work and get a private home study and a home study through foster care. So it is interesting. Now, on the other side, international adoption, the home studies are different based on which country you're adopting from, because each country sets their own regulations for what they would like to see in a home study. So if we have a couple come to us and say, hey, I want to adopt internationally, we tell them, first of all, you need to identify a country from where you want to adopt, and then an agency that's working with that country. You do have to use an agency in an international adoption. And then we base the home study on the template provided by the agency working with that other country, because each of them are very, very different international home studies.
Why is that? Because I feel like a human is a human. That's just me personally.
That's exactly.
Yeah, no, and I totally get that. I think it's just because we have to comply with the regulations of the different country, right? Not every country is talking to each other and saying, hey, here's a universal template of what we should ask for in a home study. They all have their idea of what they want covered. Like, for example, I've written several home studies for Colombia, and Colombia is the most intense country I've ever written a home study for. You would never guess that, but they want like maps and graphs. They want like these ecograms and these genograms. The people have to fill out all these like weird things that I've never seen before, and I have to like embed them in the body of the home study. So for whatever reason, like they want to know who are their support people, and they want it in a drawing form that's like, here's their immediate support system, here's their neighbors, here's their church group, here's their, and it's all like written into this diagram, and no other country requires that. So it's really just whatever the people who make the laws in their country are wanting to see for a home study, they put that there.
Has it always been that way from Colombia? Because obviously I'm from Colombia and I'm 35 years being adopted. Has it always been that way? Oh no.
I don't know. Since I started in practicing with Utah Adoption Specialists, so in 2013, like I said, I've written several home studies for Colombia, probably more than any other country, to be honest with you. And they've been that way since I started.
Melena, I need you to ask your mom. I need you to ask your mom and follow up with your mom and dad and find out
because I didn't realize that. That's crazy.
Isn't that wild?
That is crazy. That's so crazy. I honestly never would have thought that. Yeah, because like I said,
drawing form. Didn't you say drawing form? Like almost like a flow chart or a family tree or some kind of.
Yep. They call them ecograms and genograms. They have to have one of each in their home study.
That's so I'm gonna have to go over and pick my mom's brain. Okay, here's another question, because you said sometimes that you have couples come that like maybe want to do both routes as far as like foster, or do they have to pay for both separate home studies if they can't?
So the nice thing about a foster care home study is that it's free. The state always provides those services for free, so they do not need to pay for both. And so they can pursue that one on the side. It's just kind of replicating work, so they have to turn in a lot of the same documents that they would to us for a private adoption. So I guess if they just do them both at once and like get all the same documents, send theirs to them and send the others to us, then it's less work maybe, but they do not have to pay for them twice. So that's nice.
Okay.
I guess I'm just like so confused as to why we have to replicate the work. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, say if you do something with the state, if they brought you the state home study and brought it to you, and it's certified, notarized, however they make it official. If they brought it to y'all, can you accept that as part of the home study and then just fill in the parts that need to be filled in by y'all? Or do you have to do a brand new whole thing all over again from square one?
Realistically, we'd be happy to, but the state will not release the home studies to their clients. So the state retains ownership of the home study because they wrote it for free, so the state in Utah retains ownership of it. The adoptive couple does not have the home study and they don't own the home study. So realistically, if the adoptive couple had access to their home study and was able to get it to us, sure, we could update it or add what parts we needed to and use it.
Right.
They don't have it. It's opposite. In a private adoption, we always release the home study to the couple. It's their product. They paid for it. They get it when it's done. So they have that. They have that in their possession. And then, opposite side, the state just won't accept it. They'll just say, hey, we have to redo ourselves.
Does that mean they know what the state said about them? Are they told what the report says, or are they just like, yes, you passed, or no, you failed, and then that moves on?
I think it's yes, you passed, or no, you didn't pass, and they move on. But I'm not exactly sure, honestly, because I've never written home studies for the state. I don't know what that process totally looks like. I don't know if the couple gets to review the home study or read it over or anything like that. I don't know. I just know at the end of the day, they don't own the product. They can't keep it.
So what goes everything into a home study? Because when I think of home study, I think of people physically coming to your home. Is it like every month? Is it like what all goes into that? Yeah,
that's a great question. A home study is actually a written document that's a summary of every aspect of your life, basically. So the home studies that we write for Utah Adoption Specialists are 18 sections long, and they usually tend to be about 15 pages when they're written. So yes, one portion of it is we're coming to your home and checking for a safe environment for a child, but that's a very small portion of it. There are sections on references. You get reference letters written about you. There's medical reports, there's employment verifications, there's financial verifications. There's sections on the husband and wife or if it's a single parent, the single parent or same-sex couple, whatever, the two spouses, there's a section on each of their biographical history. So their background, what their upbringing was like, what they do for work, things like that. I'm trying to think, there's a section on background checks. So we run background checks on them. There's sections on their children in the home, their parenting style, motivation to adopt, conditions that they're hoping to adopt in a child, what to accept in a child. Those are some of the sections that are in the home study.
Okay, so we had Jenny come on, who she's from California and she's a foster mama. She was telling us she had a very interesting question, and I want to ask just to see if it's the same here in Utah, because it might be state-based different. But they asked about sex life. Is that something that you guys ask about? To me, it seemed a little bizarre, but like, why? Yeah. Can I ask why they asked that?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. We do ask about, we don't ask directly about sex life. It's not phrased that way. We ask about intimacy in the marriage. And the reason why I ask about it is because commonly, and it's asked this way, we give our couples a questionnaire that they fill out. That's like, however many pages long. They answer a lot of these questions in written format, so that we're not sitting and interviewing them for like 10 hours. It would take 10 hours to probably get through all that in an interview form. We do interviews as well, but a lot of it they've written in this questionnaire. And so the question is like, have there been any struggles with intimacy in your marriage? Most of the time people say no, and that's great. We pass on that question. We don't ask about it in interviews. But there are lots of times actually where couples who have infertility have struggled with intimacy, physical intimacy, because it takes a toll on you when you're trying to have a baby and you're having timed intercourse and all those different things. So a lot of couples will be honest in that section and say, yeah, we've had a hard time because of this reason. Most commonly, that's the reason. Okay. And the reason we want to know about it is because we know that intimacy is a really important part of a relationship. A physical intimacy is an important part of a marriage. Like, let's just be honest about how it is. And so if there is a struggle there and it's impacting the overall health of the marriage, then we need to know about that. We are looking for safe environments for a child to be placed in. And I know it's not fair. I know it's not fair because every other couple who just gets pregnant and has babies never answers questions like this. Yeah. And so I get it from that perspective, but we have a legal requirement to say this is a suitable couple for adoption, and they pass all the requirements. So if we have a marriage that's struggling for whatever reason, it's probably not the time or place for that couple to be adopting. So we might refer them out for a course of therapy or something like that, and then say, come back when things are a little bit better. But almost never is it a very, very super in-depth conversation.
Gotcha. I do love that you give them a resource. I think that's awesome. Instead of just like turning them away, it's like, here, like, I think I know, because you just want them to be better. That's amazing. No, that's really good. Oh shoot, what was my other question? I just totally, Delancey, do you have anything? I know you're staring to your dogs.
No, I was telepathically telling all four of them to just
what was my other one? If you have one.
So I guess my whole entire thing is because there's a resource on the intimacy thing, and I guess just circling back to the home study and whatever, and if it's something that outside of intimacy, if there's other stuff that they're struggling with as to why they're not able to do an adoption right then, are they provided those resources as well to be able to follow up and I really like
there's very few things honestly that we would say you are never eligible to have a home study. Some of those would be a criminal history that's significant, or a history of child abuse or sexual abuse towards a minor. Some of those things are hard, like, nope, you're never going to be able to qualify because of your history. But almost everything else you can think of is fixable. Like if someone has an active addiction to something that they're working on, you can send them to a course of therapy. And even if they're still not, 100% cured, when some people aren't going to be with certain types of addictions and things like that. If their therapist signs off and says, hey, this is a suitable couple and they're good to go for adoption, we take the recommendation of the therapist who knows the client well and is working with them on certain things, So there's very few things that we would just say, like, that's a hard no.
I like that. No, that's good to know. Okay. So, or you can ask my other question is like, what's the difference? Cause I know you kind of touched on it when you first started, is like agency versus like you guys, cause you guys are more private, right? Private adoption. So
Correct.
like, is it just cost, or like, is that the biggest thing, or what are like the differences?
Yeah. So an agency adoption in the state of Utah, one of the major differences is obviously the cost. The cost is it prohibits people sometimes from choosing that path.
Right.
But the other thing, the kind of a pro for an agency adoption is that they have the ability to match. They're licensed matching agencies, right? So, and because they have extra funding, they can often use money towards advertising and things like that to help expectant parents use their services. So an agency often has the ability to match quicker than in a private adoption. Not always, but in a private adoption, we basically teach our clients, we're not charging a fee for matching. We're not charging a placement fee. We're not charging crazy amounts of money for anything. We're charging exactly for the services they're provided. But we basically teach them, here are the steps you can take to make a match on your own. And so they are required to be pretty active in their own matching. So they're using social media, they're using word of mouth, they're talking to friends and family, profile hosting websites, however they want to go about it. But that is really put into their hands to take those steps themselves to make the match. So that's another major difference between a private and an agency. And then in a private adoption, the legal services are provided by an attorney. They're not provided by my group. We're not attorneys. We don't have the legal ability to do any of the legal side of it. Any of the paperwork and filing with court and stuff like that is done by an attorney.
Oh, okay. So wait, did you say that was like with you guys? So with like agencies, do they just have that all built in then? It's all just kind of, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. So an agency has that all in-house. The couple will need to have, like, they can execute the paperwork with the birth parents, the relinquishment documents and stuff like that themselves. The couple will need to hire an attorney just for the finalization of the adoption.
Gotcha.
So that's really just a cheap kind of quick little thing. It doesn't cost them a lot of money to do that.
That's okay.
So I was just thinking about Donald's story and everything with the agency that birth mom had worked with. When y'all have a single birth mom come to y'all to relinquish and to place their child for adoption, what due diligence process do y'all do to find the birth father, I guess, to let them know that their child is being placed for adoption, I guess is the way I want to ask that.
That's a good question. So again, we aren't making any matches. So most often we're not having birth parents come to us and say, hey, I want to place my baby for adoption. Most often we're getting involved when the adoptive couple has matched on their own. So we have couple A who finds a birth mom through their cousin whose neighbor is pregnant and looking to place her baby. Great. We'll then take on that person as a client to provide counseling services to her. And then all of the legal side of it, and the birth father is a legal thing, has to be handled by the attorney. So we don't have any jurisdiction or any rights to do anything associated with that. Best practice is always to have a father involved as often as possible. I think, there's cases where we can't, sometimes there's a rape situation or there's several possible fathers and you can't track them all down. There are cases where it really genuinely is not possible to involve a father. However, in every other scenario, I really feel strongly that fathers should be involved and they should be a part of the decision, and they should have the opportunity to consent and also be involved in the adoption and have a relationship with the adoptive couple and all those things. So good attorneys, the attorneys that we try and work with, are taking steps to proactively find the father and have him consent to the adoption. Our part of that would be that we could provide counseling to him, just like we could to the mother.
That's cool. Yeah. She asked that because Delancey has a friend who, that's kind of his situation. He is the birth dad and he found out through like a really kind of twisted way that he had a child that was being placed and he didn't give any consent to it. And so it kind of became messy. In the end,
he's with his son.
He's with his son, and the family that was potentially going to adopt him, they're like family now. It's actually a really cool story. Like the people that were going to adopt this little boy, they're like all family.
That's really cool.
It's the wildest, most crazy turn story, but what ended up happening was the birth mother told, from what I remember, the birth mother told the agency, like, he wasn't involved. He didn't want anything to do with them. And they didn't really do anything to reach out to him to find out. and to get, so that's what, yeah, to verify that. So I was curious about that because that was something that the family that was going to adopt him, that was something that she said was they should have done more due diligence to find him, to make sure that was done and everything. And I was just curious because I just feel like you, like before we started recording, you said there were just there's so many moving parts to all of this. And the more you talk, the more I'm like, I have questions. Like I have another question. Like I have another question. Like, but there's so many, how do you navigate all the moving parts? Because there are a lot of moving parts.
There are
like a lot.
And to be honest with you, like I think a big issue of this, a big component of this is the differing state laws. So as soon as you're supposed to go on the state laws based on where the baby was conceived. But if you have a birth mom that moves during her pregnancy, she could end up, and this happens a lot, and this is something that I'm not particularly fond of. Utah has very favorable adoption laws. So if you look around in Utah, we have several adoption agencies, lots and lots, probably more per, the capita than most states, but a lot of times agencies are flying in expectant parents from out of state. So they're not from Utah. They didn't conceive the baby in Utah. And so legally they have an obligation to inform a father, hey, she's in Utah and she's planning to place the baby in Utah, so that he then can do the due diligence for his end of the situation if he would like to not have an adoption take place. But I don't know that happens all the time. And so this does get really sticky because every state has different laws. And so if one moves, there's supposed to be notification, it may not happen. That is, birth fathers get left out of the equation very often when someone moves, especially when someone moves to a different state with the intention of placing the baby for adoption. So yeah, it gets messy. I mean, I could get on a soapbox because I really feel strongly about ethics. Ethics are really important to me. I strongly support ethical adoption. In any other case, I can't really say that I'm a super big advocate of adoption. I've learned a lot over the years, and this is my profession, right? But yeah, I think as far as your question goes, as far as navigating the moving parts, as far as an adoptive couple goes, an adoptive couple has the obligation in this whole scenario. They are the ones that hold the cards and the power. They need to be only supporting ethical entities. So look for agencies that practice in ethical ways. Look for adoption service providers. Look for attorneys there's a group called Quad A attorneys, which are attorneys that have done extra certification to be licensed adoption specific attorneys, basically. And so use those people that have done the extra work and gone the extra mile to know the adoption law.
That's really cool.
Another one of my pet peeves is when people are like, hey, I'm going to just use my neighbor down the street's an attorney. He's going to help me with my adoption. Well, has he ever done an adoption before? Probably not. And if he hasn't, he's not a good fit for this. You need to find someone who knows the ins and outs of the law.
Wow. Oh, yeah.
Oh, you muted yourself. Unmute.
There you
go.
Husband was calling. I'm like, oh, hang up on him.
It's like, sorry, honey, click.
I know. Sorry, bud. I'm hanging up on you. So yeah, I think the duty is on the adoptive couple to work with ethical entities.
I like that.
Oftentimes
I like that too.
Right. No, exactly. Especially if it's like young teenagers. And I'm not saying all adoptions are that way, but like, for instance, like I think going back to Donald's story, she went to a different state, right? Because I remember, I swear she went to Texas and he was
Alabama and she went to Texas and she proactively told him that she lost the baby.
Yeah. And she didn't.
And
so there was some deceit there too.
Right.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
So it goes back to the whole ethical thing, which I really like that you brought that up, because I don't feel like that's ever talked about in like the adoption process. And I love that you pointed that out too. It's like, just don't get your neighbor or your friend because they're a lawyer, because they have a law degree. Go get somebody who knows who knows, and
it's just one of those things of when you respect the process and you do your due diligence and the right things, it's going to work out the way it's supposed to and the way it should work out. It may not work out the way you want it to, but at least you followed all the appropriate steps. I mean, and you can't, like, I'm learning so much in this conversation. There's no way I could navigate this with my brother's cousins.
Yes, totally.
Like,
right.
Yeah.
You need somebody who knows what they're doing.
Why would you want to jeopardize something so sacred and so special. You would not want to have your child removed from your home because of the, incompetence of an attorney or an agency or something. And those things have happened in the past, like, why wouldn't you want the utmost professional when we were talking?
Oh, somebody's calling her again. Your popular lady.
I bet
Don't be
it's her
sorry.
husband. I bet it's her husband.
He's probably
like, why are you ignoring my calls? Why did you just send me a voicemail? Because I'm doing a podcast, sir. I am teaching these women about my job. Was it your husband? Was it your husband?
It's not my husband. My kids have Alexas in their room, and so
I know that all too well.
My husband, but it is not him. So hold on, I'm just going to text him real quick and tell him to take care
I
of
was thinking it was, and that was going to be so funny if it was, because
No, this I think this is good because people don't
this part out, right?
People don't know this part, so I love it, because then you can know the ins and outs of everything.
I love that she thinks we edit things.
We don't edit things. We'll just keep chatting. No,
we'll just keep talking. You're fine. Yeah, no, you're fine. I just thought it's funny. Y'all can edit this out, right? Yeah, we don't edit. We just let things happen. We just let stuff happen.
Real and raw. That's how we are, because it's real life. I mean, it's not structured.
It's gonna be entertaining.
It will be.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I got to think of other things. So are there any, what are more of the universal? Oh, no. Did you want to ask something? And then I'll ask mine. Did you want to ask?
Well, I was going to, and the pocket started having a meltdown. I was just going to ask, you ask, and then my question, it's kind of a more personal question than it is work related. So you go.
No, I was just going to ask, what are some more of the universal things? I love that you said it'd be easier if all the freaking states would just get on the freaking same page. It'd be so much easier. But what are some of more of the universal things? Obviously a home study, but what are some of the others that you can think of?
You have to have a home study. So I mean, I guess just basic steps in the process. Adoptive couple needs to have a home study. Once they're matched with an expectant parent, either their agency will complete the steps for them or an attorney. That's when you involve an attorney at that point. In Utah, you wait 6 months before you finalize the adoption. Every state's going to have different lengths of period of time before you go to court to finalize. And that's really just a formality. Most states, not all, but most states don't have a period of revocation. So after the birth parents have signed paperwork, they cannot change their mind. There are some states that do have a period that say 10 days or 15 days or whatever, the birth parent can change their mind. So that's all state specific as well. But universally, everyone will go to court to finalize the adoption. I think a point to make sure people understand too is that adoptive couples have a responsibility to make sure that their birth parents are taken care of. So that means paying for counseling for them prior to the placement and after the placement. And I don't like putting a cap on that. I don't like saying, oh, hey, you should be done grieving in about 6 months. So we'll put we'll pay for counseling for 6 months. Any good agency or group should be providing counseling, unlimited counseling for as long as the birth parent needs it. So that can get a little bit sticky with costs and things like that, but there's ways around that. We just charge a flat rate for counseling for our clients. And if the amount is used, great. If it's not, then that's okay. It's just a universal fund, and we can use that fund for somebody else to come in for counseling and stuff like that. So I think there's ways around it, and it's not a ton of money. I think any reasonable person would be like, hey, that's okay. I can pay that much we charge $1,000 basically for unlimited counseling for a birth parent. And I think any reasonable person would say, hey, I can pay that for the person that gave me a human being, right?
That's just a one-time fee, right? The $1,000 is just a one-time thing.
And then that's it.
Dude, yeah,
that's
of course.
That's
I would pay $1,000 for
to me. That's a
therapy.
no-brainer.
That makes sense.
Right. And some couples don't want to do it, but I think that's something that an adoptive couple who really wants to do a good job and be a good adoptive parent needs to recognize that there's somebody else on the other end of this spectrum. It isn't just about, hey, we got this baby home and we got rainbows and butterflies and everything is fantastic. Well, there's another person or two people ideally on the other end of this who, it's a really grieving process for them, and it's a loss and it's devastating, and it can be very, very hard. So we want to help people understand that they should be taking care of their birth parents. So that's kind of just an overview of universal things.
Yeah,
I feel like that's setting the tone too. You know what I mean? For the future, if there is a meeting between the child and the biological parents. I feel like that in that moment, you're setting the tone as to how that future relationship is going to develop if it does develop. I mean, why would you not want that?
No, I agree. Cause like for me, I don't know how you feel about it, but like being adopted and knowing that my parents wanted that for the person who placed me for adoption to have better, like then I'd be like, oh my gosh, even so much more mad respect because it really comes down to caring about me. Taking care of them is you're caring about me. And I think that's great. Like I would be so touched by that. Like even if they never said anything, but it came up to where,
it comes up
like,
later.
I was provided counseling and be like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. Like, thank you. Because like, that's awesome. I think that's great.
You are an extension of them. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Well, and that comes from like somebody recently brought up like the healing and developing and growing from, giving up, or not, I shouldn't say giving up because it sounds terrible, but placing a child for adoption. I'm sorry, I was fighting my dog. But placing a child for adoption, I feel like that counseling is so important because it helps you take ownership and accountability and grow and develop and heal and own your decision instead of like, that's so important. That's such a fantastic thing. That is such a fantastic service that they all offer.
No, I agree. I think that's amazing that you guys offer that because, me just barely getting into counseling for my own self just the past couple of years, like people don't realize like the magnitude of it. Like and it's not like huge things I had, like I wanted to go for. It's just things that I like wanted to talk out that, but like it helps. Counseling, therapy. Oh my gosh, it helps.
Yeah,
like it helps so much.
Yeah.
Well, and it's because it teaches you the things that you may not have been able to learn. You know what I mean? Coping skills, learning responses, reactions, figuring out that your feelings are valid. It's okay to feel a particular way, but you just can't live there.
Yeah.
You just can't stay there.
Yep, exactly.
So
exactly.
I love that. I love that y'all. How has that always been a service that y'all have included since
yes
it was founded? That's amazing.
I love that.
Because we just believe in it and we know it's important. And the other aspect of that is you don't want a birth parent to come back a year down the road or whatever and say, hey, I need some counseling, but you have to reach out to my adoptive couple to pay for this. We don't really want the adoptive couple to have to know every single time the birth parent is coming to counseling. It's none of their business really. And we want that to be, private for the birth parent. Right. So we don't have to tell them.
Hold on. So if they decide after 7 months that they're good, and then they decide a year later they need to come back and have additional counseling, they can still do that?
Yes.
Like there's
no cap on it. Yeah.
That's
there's
amazing.
No cap on it.
How awesome.
Seriously.
That's
believe in it.
That is,
you guys just need to take over the whole entire country, okay?
Yes, please.
Please
do. Please do. Can you like come down here to Mississippi and start something like that down here, please? Thank you. That'd be wonderful.
That's amazing.
Sure. I'll get right on it.
Because the older I get, the more mental health is everything. Oh no. So
yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say, no, I wish people took advantage of it more. To be honest, they don't, in the very beginning, they don't take as much advantage of. There are some that do. There are definitely some that do, but I think everybody, could benefit from more counseling than they do, especially after placement. So, but at least, it's there if they want it to be.
Dude, I feel everybody, I don't care who you are, how happy your life looks, everybody needs to go to therapy. That's just my opinion.
I totally agree. It's the best ever, isn't it? Like sit down at the neutral party and just talk about whatever you want.
It's true. Yeah. I love that you guys offer, like, so they may not accept it right then, but like you said, like 9 months down the road, I think I might want it. And I think that's amazing because
I love that.
That's, I feel like a service that is not anyway.
I know, agreed. And it may even be like a pride thing. Like they may like
understand
just
that.
too prideful. Cause like that was my thing. Like back when I was 19 and I went to counseling for a little bit, and it was, well, A, she was a wrong match, and B, it was a pride thing. It was like, I don't need this.
I don't need that. Exactly.
I don't need that. Exactly. I got 19 years old. I got all the answers. I can do this. I've got life. I did not have life. I mean, but at the same time, I do hope a stronger percentage, even if it is a pride thing and they don't use it, I do hope that they turn around and come back, even if it's a year later. Yeah. I mean, that's just how amazing. Seriously. How amazing. And like, you don't have to tell anybody. You just like come up and like, hey,
need some counseling.
Do you guys, sorry. No. With cause you said like, it's all in their hands as far as like social media, you guys don't have a website where people can come, right? Like it's all in their hands. Once like their marketing, they have to make their own. Oh, you do? Oh, cool.
We have a website. And so we maintain all of our couples on our website who want to be on there that are hoping to adopt. So we do have like a hoping to adopt tab on our website, but cool. The difference, and this is an important distinction, is that we cannot match by law, but the definition of matching is taking money for that service. So yes, we can host our couples on our website. If someone happens to come along and is like, hey, I really like that couple, fantastic. She can choose that couple. It would just be like someone down the street referring someone to someone else. You know, we're just being a middleman in that process. Yeah. We don't take any money for it. It is a free service to our clients.
That's cool.
And so that is how we can go around that instead of, we don't charge for it. So the legal definition of matching is taking a fee for that service.
Gotcha. Wow. Anybody in Utah that's listening to this, really go freaking hit Kim up and get some, like, seriously, she's amazing. Go see her, go get everything done.
Yeah. I was gonna say, even if you're not in Utah, take all of this information and like look it up in your state. Like I mean, I know there are different laws and there's different things everywhere, but I mean, I feel like they have to be kind of similar a little bit, maybe, probably not.
Yeah.
I mean,
it sounds like they are. It sounds like one of the biggest things too is like, the finalization, because cause Utah, like where I thought everybody was 6 months. And then as I've gotten to interview and see more people, it's not like that. I swear Jenny said something. It was like a year in California. Was it that long?
It was a year for her. And then Donald had, I want to say, up to 6 months.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Before it was done. And I'm still not clear on what mine was. Like, I'm still learning stuff about mine. Like it's kind of frustrating. I want to say it was like 90 days to 6 months maybe, but it wasn't, or it could have been, I don't know, because I was in Florida.
Right.
And and it's so funny because like my sister, I talked about this, she was like, it's just all of us knew, all of us know, all of us lived it. I was like, cool, you lived it. I was the baby.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know how long.
Like exactly. So I'm gonna have to ask that. I need to follow up with them and ask them how long it was, because my second sister had, like, apparently they all had plans, whatever, but like it's amazing to me how different it is.
Yeah,
some places it's 90 days, some places 6 months, like California a year. I'm sorry, no hate to California, so nobody come for me that's listening to this podcast, but let's just be real. You would think out of all the states in the United States of America that California would be like, oh, 30 days done.
Right. No, seriously,
like,
I agree.
Take the baby, 30 days done. Like done. Like I would think out of any state it'd be like super.
Do you know by chance, Kim, at all, like how long is the longest? I mean, I don't know if you know, because it's all just Utah, but no clue.
I don't know. I know Arkansas is one of the fastest. You can finalize like 5 days after the baby's born. It's crazy.
Dang.
Yeah. So we have couples that adopt from Arkansas. They just go, stay, finalize, and come home, and then it's just done. So super fast. I don't know the longest. I don't know the
the longest.
Wild.
That is way fast. Holy cow.
I feel like that's really, really fast.
Yeah. I do too. Like, that's crazy fast.
Yeah. Crazy fast. Probably a little too fast.
Yeah,
I think that's a little too fast. I feel like that's a little too fast, like a little too much.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's crazy.
5 days, Lord.
I'm trying to think of any. Can you think of anything else? Those are kind of my big ones. I'm trying to think of.
I'm still stuck on the 5 days thing. I'm sorry. Like that's still like resonating in my head because I'm sitting here thinking like I don't know. Like that just seems like, I don't know. It's just a very big decision and commitment to finalize in 5 days for all parties involved.
Well, no, I feel like it goes back to the ethical,
exactly
is what Kim was talking about. Like that's just, and that's probably the biggest thing I learned about overall today is like, make sure you get into it legally. Don't go get
legally.
Yes.
Ethically, legally,
yes.
Do it honestly. Like just be a good person.
Like it might take more work, but like Delancey said, you're gonna get an amazing outcome, whether it works in your favor or not, and whether you do unfortunately have to go through a couple failed adoptions. you'll get there, like by doing it the right,
work.
versus like Kim was saying too, you have somebody and then all of a sudden whoosh, it's gone because things were not done correctly. Like that to me would be so much more than, getting somebody in your home, having them for a while and then they're gone, versus we have this potential, it's never going to happen. But that way, I mean, you're still bonded, but it's nothing like having a physical human in your household,
and then having ripped from you.
Yes.
Yeah, like that would be a whole other level. That would be super hard. And if you think about it, at the end of the day, and I just always have to throw this little tidbit in there, just a little bit. God does not reward you if you do things the wrong way. He just doesn't. Your life is not going to work out if you do it the wrong way. And especially if you're messing with people's lives like this.
Yeah.
Like you're messing with a lot of different lives. Now, Kim, I have a question specifically for you.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you choose Ecuador?
I chose Ecuador because I volunteered in the orphanages down there when I was in college. I was a sophomore in college and I went down there with a volunteer group. I was down there for 3 months and both of my daughters happened to be babies at the time while I was there. So I know it's a little wild. It's a long, wild story, but the first one, I just loved her. Like I just fell in love with her while I was in the orphanage, taking care of her and just felt this connection with her. So I knew someday I would go back and adopt her. And so 7 years later, we adopted her, my husband and I, and then our other one we adopted when she was 11. So she was also a baby in the orphanage when I was there, and whole different story, but that's what led me there.
So awesome.
Long story short. When were you able to, and this is going to sound super weird how I'm going to ask it, but I don't mean it to sound weird. Were you able to like keep tabs on them while you were back here?
My first daughter, yes, only because, I mean, the whole stories, both of their stories are just like completely miraculous. I believe in God and I believe in miracles and I believe in kind of divine intervention. And there's no way I can deny that based on the way these stories unfolded. But the first one, her name is Flor, and Flor moved from the original orphanage, the Catholic run orphanage, the week I left the country for my volunteer. When I was leaving to go back to the United States, she moved to a different orphanage. And I was initially devastated by that, but it ended up being kind of the catalyst for me to be able to keep in touch with her, because she was moved to an orphanage that was run by a lady from North Carolina who was white and spoke English. And the nuns at the orphanage they were like 85, they didn't use email. They didn't have any way to communicate. And this other lady, her name was Stacy. I went to go see Flor one time at Stacy's new house that Flor was going to be at. And she was like, "Hey, do you want me to email you?" And I was like, yes. And so she took down my email address and she emailed me and sent me pictures and updates of Flor for all of those years, basically leading up to Flor's adoption. So she was the only one that I kept in contact with, or I had tabs on. The rest of them, I have no idea what happened to most of those kids. So yeah.
That's cool.
That's such a cool story. Sorry, go ahead.
No, don't be sorry. I was going to ask, what is so is out of all the international, that's one thing I wanted to ask too, is Colombia like the most, I don't even want to say strict, but have the most stuff that they need, and who's the most, I don't even want to say loose because that sounds weird. Who's the most lenient? There you go. Lenient country.
Well, things change all the time. Like, for example, I've written home studies for Ukraine, and Ukraine probably isn't going to be an option right now for adoption based on what's going on in the world right there. I cannot say I've written international home studies for most of the countries. There's kind of like a select few that we really, for whatever reason, have written home studies for. Colombia is by far the most strict as far as the home study requirements. The rest of them are pretty similar, not super duper. They're pretty straightforward. So
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. No, that's good to know. That's so crazy. I'm gonna have to ask my mom because that just I think that's so crazy.
Anyway. Pretty wild, right?
Anyway, yeah. Delancey, do you have any other questions for her? I can't really think of any off the top of my head, but I've seriously learned so much. It's been so good.
I learned a lot.
I'm so glad.
I learned so much. I feel like I may have to have a follow-up just so that I can I feel like I have so many like a lot of our interviews and guests that we have. I'm like, can we do a follow-up? Because I have questions.
I know,
I have
right?
more questions. And I think I'm gonna need one here too, because
there's just willing to do
there's just so much. Okay, I do have one final one. What made you what led you to do social work and to found your company? What was it?
That's a good question. So I knew from the time I was in high school, for whatever reason, I just always felt like I was going to become a social worker. And I think I nailed my career. Like, I'm very happy with it. I think it's the right fit for me. I just kind of knew from a young age that this was the field that I was going into. My adoption specific interest formed also around that time period. I have an aunt who was adopted. She was my mom's youngest sister. They had 8 biological children, my grandparents, and then had this, again, crazy kind of miraculous story where my aunt came into the family, the 9th child, and she was the only adoptee. But growing up knowing that she was adopted and kind of seeing how her story unfolded really just kind of sparked this fire in me that I was interested in adoption. And then going to Ecuador, seeing, meeting my daughters at that point, I was already on the path to becoming a social worker at that point, but it kind of just solidified, like, this is definitely what I want to do. And I have this love and this interest for adoption. My feelings towards adoption, have obviously shifted and changed over the years. There's a lot of complexities to it that were not initially there. But I think that's for the best. I think that makes me hopefully a better social worker and a better advocate for adoption and an adoption done the right way, I guess I should say. Yeah. But I founded my company after working at an agency for, 5 years or so. I worked at an agency, and that agency no longer is in operation. So my coworkers and I that founded my company knew that the agency was going to be closing, and we felt like there again was this need for services in the community. So we took the knowledge that we have from our agency days and formed this group from there.
That's so cool.
It's so cool.
That really is so cool.
Thank you.
No, I love it. No. Oh, do you have another question? Go for it. Ask her.
just I'm telling you, I have all the questions. Just one more. And this is a question for your professional side and your personal side. Melena and I both come across a lot of individuals that feel a particular strongly negative way towards adoption, the adopted community, being adopted, wanting to defend poor choices or actions or whatever, what have you. What would be your recommendation for adoptees or people who are trying to navigate that feel those negative feelings? Like, what would be your advice, I guess, for them?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I just think everybody's feeling or everybody's situation is unique, and everybody's experience is unique. So if someone's in that place where they have a really negative view of their own adoption as an adoptee, especially, they're entitled to that. And I don't think it's necessarily something that I would ever want to convince them out of. Be like, oh, hey, you should be grateful that you were adopted, or you should feel this way, or have you considered this? I just don't really think there's a place for that. I think that there is a place for just holding space for someone in what they feel and how they feel about their own situation. On the flip side, I think that I tend to, and I think a lot of people tend to give more weight to those negative voices sometimes, instead of recognizing that there are just as many, if not more, positive stories out there. We just don't tend to hear them as much because the quiet, they're quieter, or people don't feel the need to share their story when they are content and when they're happy, when things are okay. We tend to just hear a little bit more of the negative because that's how we function as people. We just air our grievances about whatever it is, right? And so do I think that there's as many negative adoption stories as there are positive? No, I don't think so. I think there's probably actually more positive stories, but that doesn't mean we don't get to listen. We don't have to listen to those negative ones and really try and learn something from it. My role as an adoptive parent, I need to listen to those stories. I need to hear how these people feel and why they feel the way they feel, so that I can hopefully do a better job for my children and meeting them where they're at in their own feelings related to their adoption. So I don't know if that entirely answered your question, but
no,
those are my
feelings. I love that. And I love that you said that. I think and I can't speak for Delancey, where we get a little bit frustrated is when it then becomes attacking. And it makes me really, really sad when they attack. Like, for one, I can think of off the top of my head, she's Black, her parents are white, and she just attacks adoptive parents, not her parents, but just kind of like, you're white, just because you put me around Black people does not mean you're immersing me in my culture. And I'm just like, And I know a lot of adoptive parents that come and talk to me because I'm obviously not white, but they're just like, it really scares them to death that they are going to do something wrong. And that's where it hurts my heart. Cause I'm like, and so I just try and tell them she's hurting. And unfortunately that's her way of expressing it. So maybe just take it with a grain of salt, but I promise you, like there's more hurt coming out of that. And so just kind of listen to it, but don't be like, just because you adopt a Black child that they're going to feel the same way that this person does. Like that's
you're a
where I
horrible
get
person
frustrated
for doing that. No. Oh, and I 100% agree with you. I don't think there's ever a place for attacking another person for the decisions they've made or the choices they've made or their viewpoints related to adoption. Is there a place for education? Absolutely.
Yes.
And if someone wants to educate, I'll tell you that attacking is not the way to do it. If
Right.
they really want their voice to be heard, they need to do it in a gentle, here's something you might think about. And that's when you're going to get people to listen, right? Not someone coming at you and being like, you're doing this wrong. Your kid's going to be screwed up for the rest of your life. There's no place for that. And I promise you're not going to get the outcome you want out of that situation. People are just going to dig their heels in more and stand on their own position and not, there's no room for growth and learning at all in that equation. So I 100% agree with you. And those are, it's really frustrating when those types of things happen. And you can see the, like, the pain on the other side, the receiving end of those attacks. Hard.
Well, and it goes to the whole entire hurt people, you know, like, and I can appreciate when somebody's hurting, and I can appreciate when people, I guess I just, where it frustrates me to, like, and as Melina said, it hurts my heart, is when people choose to live in it. Rather than
totally
stay process and grow from it. It's kind of like, it just doesn't do anybody any good, and especially yourself, if you choose to resonate and live in the negative feelings, like things just don't work out for you, and you're just not, it affects your health, it affects mental health, physical health, all of it. And then attacking other people, it's just kind of like,
exactly.
Like, I just
well, and I like
people that are living in that space, because you know it's way more about them, and you really do want to be like, come on, like, work through some of these feelings, go to therapy, get some help. Because it is a hard place to live. You cannot change people.
Exactly. No matter what you say or what you do, they've already built that wall up to that. And they're just going to be like, please, whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So people are going to people.
It's it's hard. So anyway, okay, Delancey, anything else? Because I don't want to shut you down if you've got more questions for. Okay. No, Kim, thank you for coming on and doing this. And I know, do you want to maybe give a blurb of where people can find you if they're listening from Utah, or where they can go for resources if they're not in Utah?
Yes, sure. My website, or my company's website, is utahadoptionspecialist.com. Social media, I think it's Kim Perry. It's Kim Perry is my social media. And as far as resources outside of the state of Utah, I think the website adoption.com is probably a good starting place that people can just kind of look. And then Quad A attorneys, like I mentioned before, every state will have a listing of Quad A attorneys. So that's AAAA, 4 A's attorney. If you Google that, it'll pull up a list for the entire country, and you can look by your state. And if you want to know a good place to start with adoption in your state, I would contact a Quad A attorney, because that they're already basically certified in adoption, and they know what they're talking about, and they can probably direct you to good resources. So
I'm not gonna lie, I thought Quad A was like a fancy French word.
It was a word. I did too.
It's 4 A's.
And she's like A 4 A's, Quad A.
No,
I'm
don't
like,
be
that
sorry.
makes more sense now. No, it's fine. We were, she and I were both trying to make it. Yeah,
it's not fancy at all. It's because
I was gonna be like, can you spell that for our listeners?
Spell it. Spell it. And what does it mean?
Right.
Okay.
No, that's good.
Makes so much more sense now.
I love that. I love that's a starting point for people, because that's really good. And I love that anybody can. So wonderful. Perfect. Thank you. All right. Anything else before we close this out, guys?
I think we're good.
Okay. Thank you so much, Kim. And we may take you up on a follow-up, because we're all about them, because they're so fun. So thank you for taking some time out of your night to be here with us, and we appreciate you. And we will just chat with you later.
Hey, bye-bye.
Awesome. Okay. You're good to go. If you got to go to your
Did
party,
you end the recording?
Yes. Pee, really.